The female protagonist clenched her paws and said, "Children make choices, I want everything. Make big money, accumulate reputation, flowers pass by without getting wet, looking at the folk, visiting the imperial palace, wide span, strong luck, to seek rebellion, to slay rebellious thieves, kill the crown prince, Chaogang, to forge a prosperous era and achieve glory." This article is fictional, pure love should be carefully entered, plus a cultivation, no system. The female protagonist Hua Qiong's soul wearing, as a modern person who has only watched popular science videos and knows nothing but only a little, gradually manages her life step by step from a wandering wild maid outside the palace, constantly jumping back and forth in the process of survival and destruction, and gradually growing into a powerful empress. Keywords of the novel. Glory of chaos. The road to Empress's growth with no pop-ups, glory of chaos. The road to Empress's growth. Download the complete set of TXT, glory of chaos. The road to Empress's growth latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Wild Girl. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Wild Girl. In the dormitory, Hua Qiong sat at the table, constantly exhaling while rubbing her almost frozen hands, her eyes still not leaving the book spread out on the table. Tomorrow is the high school math exam, prepare well. Azu. It's so cold. If only the temperature in the dormitory looked so warm like this light. Hua Qiong looked up at her other roommates, all buried in books and studying hard, without any distractions. Hey guys, you guys are really tough. But can high math be seen with the eyes? Hua Qiong looked at the various mathematical symbols in the book and couldn't help but think of the old saying in her heart. High numbers have ravaged me thousands of times, and I treat them like first love. If anyone were to abuse themselves like Gao Shu, they would hate to break him down into 8 pieces. Woo-woo, if you abuse me, you must not fail the exam. Hua Qiong scratched her hair, took a deep breath, calmed down her restlessness, and everyone was working hard. Whether or not she could achieve excellence, at least she couldn't be left behind. But how come this high number becomes more and more hypnotic as you look at it? Hua Qiong's head gradually drooped, and she slowly lay down. The fragrance of the printed ink on the book penetrated her mind clearly, and the high numbers in front of her gradually became messy, like a tangled ball of tangled hemp, constantly falling down Hua Qiong's consciousness. Wake up! Wake up! Hua Qiong opened her bleary eyes, and a gray veil lay ahead. Is there a power outage in the dormitory? Whose wild girl sleeps in the middle of the road? Can it be whose child got lost? Wearing tattered clothes, it looks pitiful. These sounds are not as familiar as usual, very unfamiliar, and not like those from the dormitory. Who is playing a TV drama in the dormitory? Hua Qiong was so alert by the cold air that she woke up and finally saw the surrounding situation clearly. The surroundings were indeed gray, but the people in front of them were wearing tattered clothes, with few other colors except black and gray. They surrounded the city in a circle, like dark clouds in the sky, surrounding Hua Qiong in the middle. When Hua Qiong woke up, one of the passers-by asked with concern, "Which child are you from? Why did you fall asleep on the road? It's very dangerous. Go home quickly." What kind of child, what kind of road? Hua Qiong felt a bit confused for a moment. Before Hua Qiong could speak, a passerby said again, "Don't you know her? She's the child that no one in our village wants. Her mother just died of illness a while ago. Unfortunately, she's the only one left. You said whose family is dead, accumulate some good words." Hua Qiong was stunned as soon as she opened her mouth. Is this the sound coming from her own mouth? Looking down, I was wearing clothes similar to those of passers-by, but more ragged and dirty. I didn't know how many days I hadn't washed my hands, and the black on top had dried on my hands, emitting an inexplicable odor. Before she could vomit, Hua Qiong noticed that the size of her palm was very different. Looking at my own feet again, one shoe is missing, revealing my frozen red toes. This Qiong has been shocked for 10,000 years. This is impossible. Qiong stumbled out of the crowd and began to flood her mind with memories of her original self. A child's memory is very blank, except for their deceased mother and the leaking thatched cottage. Qiong looked around and saw houses made of mud and thatch mixed together, scattered around. The better houses were made of wood, which was very eye-catching. There are some people standing outside, dressed completely unlike modern times. Qiong stood in front of these houses in a daze, the piercing wind reminding her that if she didn't find a place to hide, she would really freeze to death. Memories flooded in again, this time about her original self and her mother's residence. Qiong felt goosebumps all over her body, and had to mechanically follow the path in her memory, searching for her original house. The road occasionally attracts villagers to explore, but most of them are guarded and indifferent, like looking at a stone or a stray dog on the road. Qiong rushed to the small thatched cottage in her memory. The house in front of us cannot even be described as a house, it can only be called a simple shed. A few broken pieces of wood and thatch are combined in front of us, and the open door that is tied together is called a door. Qiong gently pulled and opened it. Without considering so much, Qiong rushed to the pottery pot inside the house. In her memory, it was for her original body, mother, and drinking water, and there would always be a little left inside. Qiong rubbed her face and slowly looked towards the pottery basin filled with water. On the calm water surface, there is a reflection of a dirty little girl aged 5 or 6. Qiong reached out to touch her face, and the little girl in the water also touched her face. Ah! A scream from a young child rushed out of the dilapidated thatched cottage, and Qiong fell to the ground, panting heavily. Her mind was in chaos, and she pushed back and forth until her back was pressed against the wall, unable to retreat. The chill crawled up Qiong's body along her back. Being frozen down again meant getting sick. Qiong stood up and patted the soil on her body. Now, what was even more worrying was what was happening to her on the other side. I only remember reading math, it seems like I just took a nap and became like this. Can we just take another nap and go back? Qiong glanced at the dilapidated house, where there was really no place to rest. She simply ran to the pile of thatch inside the house, scraped open the surrounding thatch, and dug a suitable-sized pit for herself. Then she lay down and, with a whimper, waved her small hand to cover herself with the thatch. Just lying down, a carp jumped up straight. This thatch is too damp inside. If cold air is a physical attack, this damp thatch is a magical attack, which instantly broke Qiong's defense. Moreover, thatch can easily poke the exposed skin, causing both pain and itching, making it very uncomfortable. I can't take a nap at all. Looking around, apart from a pottery basin and a pile of thatched grass next to the door, the entire room was left with a table, a chair, a cabinet, and a wooden board supported by stones. This should be a bed. The only furnishings are very old and simple. Cabinet. Qiong's eyes lit up when she saw the cabinet, and she ran over excitedly. Upon closer inspection, it seemed that the cabinet was not made of good wood and was divided into 3 layers. Opening the bottom layer, there were several very old clothes inside, with several patches on top, which were very thin. Qiong touched them. It is made of cotton and linen material, and without exception, it is worn in summer. Opening the second layer, apart from some dry sweet potatoes, there were only a few bowls and plates, 2 pairs of chopsticks, and an unknown piece of cloth in a broken pottery jar. Qiong reached out and pinched it a bit. Upon smelling it, a faint bitter and salty taste entered her nose. It's salt, but using salt now is not very useful. Qiong looked up at the 3rd floor and couldn't reach it at her current height. Turn around and pull the chair next to the table. As soon as she walked in, she heard the paper on the table being blown away by the wind, but it didn't fall off the table. Curious, Qiong struggled to climb up the chair and saw the painting that was blown away by the wind. Memories of the original body surge back. Every month, my mother would draw a portrait of the same person, and after finishing it, she would hold on to her original body and wash her face with tears. Qiong's head was filled with question marks. What was the situation? Qiong unfolded the composition on the table, and the face in the painting was pressed down by the inkstone. No wonder it wasn't blown down by the wind. After removing the inkstone, a young man's face was clearly presented before his eyes. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Man in the Picture. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Man in the Picture. I have to praise the painting skills of my original mother. The lines and contours of the characters in the painting are very distinctive, and it is obvious that they are handsome. TSK, there is also a peach blossom mole under the right eye. Qiong kept searching for the original owner's impression of the man in the painting, but found nothing. No wonder it's just a child of 5 or 6 years old, not yet at the age of memorization. Looking at other parts of the painting, there was something written next to it, but unfortunately, the outline of the inkstone was printed on the words, which happened to stain the name. Her surname is not very common, and it is rare to see people with the same name and surname here. Countless speculations have arisen in Qiong's mind. Does this have anything to do with her original mother? Relatives of the original mother. My original brother. People who owe money but don't pay it back. But it doesn't matter either. At this moment, Qiong, wearing leaky cotton pants, was about to cry without tears, and her stomach began to growl. Not everyone wants to come to ancient times. The most important thing now is to see if we can go back to modern times. Qiong cautiously jumped off the chair, a pair of dark hands pulling the legs of the chair and dragging it forward until it was next to the cabinet. After climbing onto the chair, you can just see inside. A thin layer of ash has fallen on the third layer of the cabinet, and there are several books inside. Qiong took it down and looked at it, which were all books on appreciating paintings, as well as a copy book that seemed to have been written by the great scholars of this era. These are probably the favorites of the original mother before her death, otherwise it would be impossible to live this kind of life and engage in romantic activities. But that's right, life has already been like this, there must be a place to rest. Qiong reorganized the books and placed them on the other side of the cabinet. When I looked inside again, I unexpectedly found a small purse. If I hadn't taken out the books from the cabinet, with Qiong's current height, I wouldn't have been able to see it. When I reached it, I was already sweating profusely. The purse is quite exquisite, with pink lotus flowers embroidered on the blue-dyed fabric. The blue-dyed fabric seems to instantly transform into a pond, completely natural. Qiong carefully opened the purse, which contained not only a few pieces of silver, but also a stone tablet, to be precise, half a piece. The tablet was clearly cut by humans, gradually changing from light brown to dark brown and then to black, without any words or symbols on top. The cut surface is also exceptionally smooth. This kind of decoration is really unique. After Qiong took off the broken silver and stone tablet, only a small portion of the broken silver was left on her body. The rest was tidied up and put back into her purse. Finally, she carefully placed it behind the stone supporting the bedboard, just enough to block the purse. The location itself is concealed, and it is also convenient for subsequent retrieval without the need for further tinkering. Gollum. My stomach kept screaming, and I thought there were still some sweet potatoes in the cabinet. Let's make do with having some roasted sweet potatoes today. Based on the TV drama she had watched in her mind, Qiong dug a pit outside the house, took some relatively dry thatch, and then found 2 branches and 2 pieces of flint. She held the flint in her small hands and struck each other hard. Sparks fell along the flint, igniting the thatch. Fortunately, there was some wood outside that was enough to roast 2 sweet potatoes. Although I came here unexpectedly, it's not surprising that today's meal won't be unexpected. Qiong looked at the flickering flames, and her mood gradually calmed down and relaxed. She baked sweet potatoes with one hand, and the flames shone on Qiong and sweet potatoes, which were particularly warm. In no time, the fragrance of sweet potatoes emanated, sweet and delicious. Holding the sweet potato with great anticipation, peeling off the outer layer of the burnt skin, the fragrance inside was completely released. Qiong. I'm back. Ah. Before she could finish speaking, Qiong was startled by the sudden sound and dropped the sweet potato onto the ground. She rolled around a few times before stopping. Before they could pick it up, a figure had already taken the lead and picked up the roasted sweet potato on the ground. It was being scalded, but they had to endure the heat and tear open the sweet potato skin. Then they took a big bite. Even though they were being scalded, they still gave Qiong a brilliant smile. I knew you cared for me and baked sweet potatoes for me, but they didn't eat for me. Qiong looked at the little boy in front of her who was not much cleaner than herself, and the memories of the original owner kept surging. Since the original owner came to this village, he has not been welcomed. Usually, only the little boy in front of him named Wang often plays with the original owner. Just didn't expect that the original owner's name was also Qiong. Wang, also known as Zhao Ting, is about 11 years old and is now devouring roasted sweet potatoes in front of him. His parents have been silent for over a decade and have been raised at his uncle's house. Although he is a close relative, he rarely receives a normal treatment. If his family is in a good mood, he will have food to eat. It is also common for him to go hungry when he is in a bad mood. Qiong sighed helplessly and picked up another sweet potato to eat. In her memory, Zhao Ting seemed to have followed her uncle on a trip, and there was also a long trip to go recently. You've all gone out, can't you think of a way to save up some small pieces for yourself? Wang stopped eating roasted sweet potatoes and stared at Qiong with wide eyes. Qiong, how did you ask such a question? Qiong. I, an 18-year-old adult, felt a bit strange when a teenager called me this. Ting, don't call me Qiong in the future, just call me Qiong. But I'm older than you. Before she could finish speaking, Qiong pointed her sweet potato at Wang and said, let's just call it that way from now on. Also, what's wrong with what I just said? Zhao Ting put down the roasted sweet potato he was eating and said with a hint of wilting, oh, my cousins. Every time I go out, when I go back to my uncle's house, they will definitely clean me up and check inside and out to see if I have any hidden things. You know all of this, why bother making fun of me with these words? This time, all the xiaobing, baked cake and griddle, I bought outside the city were crushed by them, and I fed them to the dog in front of me. After speaking, Zhao Ting choked up a bit, wiped away her tears, and continued to eat roasted sweet potatoes. When I learn my true skills, I'll leave here. Just leave early. Qiong suddenly felt a little emotional. The days under someone's protection were already difficult, let alone in this resource-scarce place in ancient times. What skills are you planning to learn? Anything is fine, as long as you can leave here. Although I don't understand many things, when it comes to survival ability, I am always stronger than an 11-year-old child. Suddenly, I had some thoughts in my heart and shook my head to deny it. Now that I am only a child of 5 or 6 years old, maybe I can return to the dormitory after sleeping today. Time was tight, and Qiong had to swallow what she wanted to say. She really wanted to go back to modern times. It's getting late, you should hurry back after finishing your meal. I also need to prepare to rest. Zhao Ting felt a bit disappointed. After finishing the sweet potatoes, he walked towards the thatched pile. Qiong is curious about what he wants to do. I saw him pick up some dry thatch and lay it neatly on the bedboard. He rolled the thatch several times and pressed it flat. Ting, are you here? Qiong, Qiong, I know what it feels like to have no one to take care of me. I don't want you to be left unattended like me after losing your mother. Qiong was momentarily speechless, but her heart was indeed touched. She was just a teenager, and it was hard for her to think about herself even in her own difficult situation. I'm leaving, I'll come find you again in a few days. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. No Technology. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. No Technology. The next day, Qiong was awakened from the cold. She stared at the place where sweet potatoes were roasted last night for a long time, then fell back and lay on the bedboard, staring straight at the thatched roof. I really didn't go back. Qiong covered her face with both hands and then opened it again, still seeing the same scene before her eyes. Although it is difficult to accept, there is no better way to accept it now. Try to adjust your mindset and constantly cheer yourself on. I am a modern person who has passed through a lonely wooden bridge with thousands of troops and horses. In terms of knowledge level, I am ahead of the times, on poetry, song and fu, leading the way. In terms of cognitive thinking, it is even more overwhelming. As soon as Qiong thought of these things, her heart was filled with courage, so she worked hard to search for knowledge in her mind and realized something. My so-called knowledge, except for what I learned in textbooks, seems to have been learned through watching modern science popularization videos. So poetry, songs, and prose. Qiong worked hard to search, and as a computer science college student, she doesn't even learn poetry, songs, and prose in her daily life. I almost returned what I learned in high school to my teacher. Don't panic, at least I still have cognitive thinking. Thinking and cognition. But how can this thing be monetized? If it were to promote freedom and equality, would it be kept as a strange thing by the ancients? Qiong is sitting in bed at this moment, regretting that she usually reads all kinds of messy science popularization. Why didn't she read the ancient guidebook? When it comes to whether one has the necessary skills or not, there are. Is there a computer in ancient times? No. It's equivalent to being blind without any technical skills. Qiong constantly comforted herself in her heart. It's okay, at least now she has time. Having time indicates a turning point. She is a talent of the new century and will not be overwhelmed by lack of technology or poetry. There are always more ways than difficulties. Qiong's spiritual light flashed. Without technology, it's not scary. She has plenty of ideas and only needs to practice. Countless ideas popped up in her mind, and in this simple thatched cottage, Qiong decided that she must go into business and make money at this stage. It is currently unclear to what extent this country prioritizes agriculture and suppresses commerce. Qiong jumped off the bedboard, jumped in front of Zhao Ting, patted his shoulder, and said happily, "You are the timely reign of this era." Zhao Ting scratched his head. Qiong was so happy today and asked in confusion, "What rain?" "I didn't see any rain." "Did you dig a lot of sweet potatoes so happily?" "Ting, if I remember correctly, you went out with your uncle to sell the excess food in the house, right?" "Yeah, this year's harvest is good, and when it snows in winter, the grain can sell at a good price in other places." "Why did you ask about this?" "Since it's a business, how is the tax determined?" Zhao Ting scratched his head awkwardly and said, "My uncle's family is always on guard against me. They don't even want me to take an extra bite of food, and I can't get involved in money matters." "That's right, how could your uncle's family let you hear about business?" Qiong felt a bit regretful. Zhao Ting was his most direct source of information, and he had to go and inquire about things he didn't know. But I saw that he was quite happy when he came back. When he met someone who was also selling grain, he was willing to chat a few words. "How much did you sell?" "Not much, about 10 bags. From Zhao Ting's words, it can be seen that the farmers of this era were not strictly restricted in their business dealings. In true ancient times, class was extremely rigid, and the son of a craftsman could only be a craftsman, while the daughter of a fisherman could only be a fisherman. Low status is low status, and the distinction between commoners and nobles is even more strict. Are there many people like you? Every year, there are people like this who go out to sell grain. In addition to selling grain, there are also many people selling other things. Qiong, do you want to buy something? What else besides food? Qiong did not answer Zhao Tingan's words, she only wants to confirm the business situation of this era. There are also various frozen goods, clothing sellers, and sweet potato sellers. As soon as Zhao Tingan mentioned sweet potatoes, his eyes lit up a lot and he gradually became excited. This year's sweet potatoes are even cheaper, and 1 copper plate can buy 2. Is there anything else? Except for those who sell books, most of the food is sold. How much does a book cost? I heard it costs 1 or 2 silver, but the famous ones still need to go up. Why do you care about books when you can't even eat enough? Zhao Tingan glanced at Qiong's face and slowly said, when your mother was still alive, she loved famous artists' paintings the most. I was curious and asked her before. Qiong secretly called out for carelessness. Her original mother's preferences were almost forgotten, but fortunately she was facing Zhao Tingan. Judging from his innocent appearance, she couldn't even doubt him. Tingan, I want to do business. Doing business. Zhao Tingan was surprised and said, Qiong, you have really changed a lot. I thought you were always quiet and gentle. Looking at the little girl in front of me, it was exactly the same as when I met her before, but I couldn't tell what was different. Qiong hated herself for being quick to talk, and she kept roast about herself. But in my memory, Zhao Tingan is indeed very close to his original self. Although he is a child, he has also gone through some hardships. In Qiong's eyes, at least he is not a stupid person. Qiong took Zhao Tingan's hand, let out a sigh, and rubbed it. Tingan, thank you for laying the thatch for me yesterday. I also want to take care of you. Yesterday, I was worried that if I could go back to modern times, it would be painful to easily make promises to others and disappoint them. Now, there is no need to worry anymore. It is false to say that one does not want to take care of Zhao Tingan. After all, an adult would feel heartbroken when they see a kind child suffer injustice, no matter who he is. Now that she is occupying the body of the original owner, as a gesture of gratitude, it is also appropriate for her friends to help her a lot. Qiong secretly decided to leave when Zhao Tingan could live independently. Take care of me. Zhao Tingan murmured, I haven't heard such a thing for many years. Since I remember, I have been serving others like my own servant, and tears welled up in my eyes. In order for us to live a better life, I should also transition from being quiet to a different state. I need to find ways to do business, earn a lot of money, and let's get better and better. Zhao Tingan nodded forcefully. By the way, why did you come to find me? Zhao Tingan scratched his head awkwardly and let out a scream from his stomach. My cousin didn't go to the teacher's place. He was beaten by my aunt and saw that I wasn't beaten, so he kicked my food to the ground. It seems that no matter which era there is, there are always bear kids, and bear kids who waste food hate them the most. Qiong opened the cabinet and found that there were very few sweet potatoes left inside, which could not last for a few days. It seems that we need to set off as soon as possible. Here, take it and eat. Zhao Tingan took the sweet potato and happily roasted it. Qiong pondered and said, Tingan, when will you and your uncle go out next time? 3 days later, go to a distant town where everything is available. Do you want to buy anything? I won't buy it, but can you do me another favor? Take me to the town you mentioned. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Simple Traps. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Simple Traps. I'll figure out a way to bring you along. Okay, if you have any questions, please let me know in a timely manner. I'm waiting for your message. Zhao Tingan nodded, ate sweet potatoes, and ran away happily. Qiong has nothing to do with her free time. Anyway, she was also awakened by the cold, so she went to the village to see not only the sweet potatoes, but also the places where she could get food. Looking up, those thatched houses are not much stronger than where I live. According to my original memory, this is a very small village with not many people. They all live on a small amount of food, such as Zhao Tingen's uncle's family having surplus grain to sell. In the eyes of the villagers, it can be said that it is very wealthy. It seems that I need to see if there is anything to dig and eat near the village. Many villagers have already had breakfast and strolled around the village entrance. When they saw Qiong walking towards here, they thought he was here to catch the autumn breeze and couldn't help but whisper without any intention of avoiding it. Looking at her pale and emaciated face, it seems like she hasn't eaten for a few days. My family doesn't have any extra rations to share with her. Why is she staying in the village without leaving? She doesn't want to stay at someone's house, does she? The more people looked at her, the more she became disgusted. Qiong couldn't help but complain that she had no intention of coming to eat, nor did she speak up, so she was so unpopular. Qiong made up her mind to leave this small village in 3 days. Even if Zhao Tingen stops him, it won't work. The people at the village voluntarily gave way to Qiong, fearing that she would entangle them. Although Qiong may have some grievances, as a modern person, he can understand people's helplessness and defense when productivity is insufficient. It can be understood that on the one hand, I didn't harm anyone or ask for help, so I couldn't afford to speak ill of myself. On the other hand, I also have to eat and don't bother to pay attention to those villagers who have broken mouths. Do it yourself and have plenty of food and clothing. Dig sweet potatoes. Little girl. Wait, don't leave yet. Qiong turned around and saw a mother-in-law anxiously running over from behind. She searched her memory, but there was no memory of this person, and the original owner had no memory of her. This chubby mother-in-law, although dressed roughly for a jog, showed no signs of panic or anxiety, and was even more kind. She handed Qiong a bundle of wood tied with hemp rope. You fainted and fell on the roadside last time. I wanted to call you out, but you ran too fast and ignored me. I took care of your wood first. I just heard Wang say, I only saw you recently. I was planning to send you over, but I didn't expect to meet you earlier. Qiong finally realized that it was probably something she had lost before her soul pierced. She ran away from the crowd that day and didn't notice anything. After thanking her, Qiong asked, Grandma, do you also know Wang? I am a servant of the Zhao family, and Wang often helps me with this old lady's work. The mother-in-law glanced at the wood in her hand and reminded, You've made these woods too wet to be used for firewood. Qiong glanced at the wood in her hand, weighed it, and realized that she was an outsider who didn't understand at all. She also hadn't watched any science popularization videos like this. Choose some hardwood that is heat-resistant and has a strong fire. Ah, mother-in-law, it seems like I've been chopping for half a day and it's of no use, Qiong said helplessly. When she wanted to eat, she either bought her own ingredients to make, or had some takeout. Now she had to use firewood to cook, which was an unimaginable path. It's not completely useless either. You've made the branches softer when you cut them, so there's still some use. Qiong's eyes couldn't help but light up. She didn't expect the original firewood to come in handy, with some small expectations. When my old man was still here, he often hunted. I followed the cat and made simple traps. Come with me. Grandma, I haven't asked you how to address me yet. The old lady's surname is Wang, and she has been working at the Zhao family. Wang also knows me. Snowflakes began to drift down from the sky, and Grandma Wang affectionately touched Qiong's head. The whole family slowly left the village. Until Grandma Wang chose a withered shrub, she took out a short hoe pinned to her waist, and the two of them began to take turns digging deep pits around the bushes until the depth of the pit was enough to accommodate the next Qiong. Cut down Qiong's branches at regular intervals and insert them into the hole, creating a pattern that reminds her of the old-fashioned fan hanging from the ceiling in the classroom when she was a child in school. Grandma Wang found another longer hard branch nearby, took out half a sweet potato from her pocket, tied it to the branch like fishing, and finally firmly pinned the branch directly above the hole. When a rabbit wants to eat sweet potatoes, it will step on these soft branches and fall into the hole. Qiong looked at this trap. Although it was simple, it could be considered efficient even when there was nothing. The heat on Grandma Wang and Qiong's bodies kept rising, and Qiong got up and wiped Grandma Wang's sweat with her sleeves. It was really difficult for her, as an elderly person, to come out in the winter and even help herself. "Little girl, come and see again in 1 or 2 days, maybe you'll have something to gain." After all, Qiong is still a child with a physiological age of only 5 or 6 years old. It was a bit difficult to help Grandma Wang up, and even for a moment, her eyes turned black, indicating that her original body was not good and it was necessary to take good care of her. I have a deeper expectation for simple traps in my heart. Grandma Wang, where else can I find sweet potatoes nearby? Where there are sweet potatoes now, except for some of the Zhao family's fields that may not have been fully harvested, the other few in the village probably don't have much food. Zhao's land. Yes, it's the Zhao family where Wang is, and it's also the place where I help. It's not far from the trap, and there's a boundary marker next to the field ridge with the character, Zhao, engraved on it. Qiong glanced at Grandma Wang's hand pointing in the direction and silently wrote it down in her heart. Seeing off Grandma Wang, Qiong rushed towards the Zhao family's land. As soon as she thought of the aroma of roasted sweet potatoes, her body immediately became full of strength. The snow kept falling, but she couldn't feel any coldness. Find some sweet potatoes before the snow completely covers the ground. Qiong was running in the fields because her clothes were very close to the color of the land. From a distance, it looked like a pile of soil moving, like a natural protective color. Ha! Qiong stopped and saw 2 bright colors swaying around the nearby field ridge. She quickly lay on the ground and carefully observed the movement in the distance. What is the situation? Is it difficult to find some sweet potatoes to eat like yourself? Looking at the clothes of those 2 little boys, they were brightly colored and didn't even have a patch on their whole bodies, unlike those who needed to come to the land to find food. Is it just that I'm being overly concerned? As the 2 little boys approached, their voices became clearer. Wang, who doesn't have parents, complained to my mother last time that I didn't go to the teacher's place, which caused me to get beaten up. Don't you also feed his Xiaobing, baked cake and griddle, to the dog? This scumbag must be jealous that I eat better than him and dress warmer than him, and I feel jealous. When my father goes out today, I'll see how I deal with him. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. The second son of the Zhao family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. The second son of the Zhao family. Qiong was lying in the field, because her clothes were very close to the color of the land, like natural protective colors. Coupled with her petite figure and the cover of shrubs, she looked like a pile of dirt from a distance, without any sense of discord. Upon hearing their conversation, Qiong realized that the 2 boys in front of her were the children of Uncle Zhao Ting's family. As the 2 boys approached closer and closer, Qiong's heart also rose to her throat. These 2 bear kids were used to bullying people, and if she saw herself eavesdropping on them here, she would be at most 6 years old now, unsure how to be teased. After they walked in, Qiong finally saw clearly that one of the boys was short and chubby, only half a head taller than himself, eating round and plump, wearing colorful clothes that looked like a ball, and his eyes were almost squeezed away by the flesh on his face. The other boy is slightly thinner, with a shrewd expression on his face and his eyes wandering around without a definite answer. I saw him pat his chest, as if there was some treasure hidden inside, with an air on his face. Pichio immediately became unhappy. If it weren't for you running around the house that day, how could my white jade cloud cake slice have fallen to the ground? The skinny boy proudly glanced at Pichio, took out a clean little bag from his arms, carefully opened it, and inside stood a white pastry. Although there were no plum blossoms nearby, Qiong smelled waves of plum fragrance in the air. Qiong sniffed and stared at the thin boy intently. The thin boy gently took a piece from the top of the pastry and held it in his mouth. The aftertaste was so beautiful that it seemed like countless plum blossoms were blooming behind him. He even occasionally opened his eyes to appreciate Qiong's expression. "What's so amazing? My father brought me the latest jade pendant from Jiangnan, which is much stronger than your shabby pastry." Upon hearing this, the skinny boy suddenly became unhappy and sarcastically said, "What kind of Jiangnan jade pendant are you?" Even though the pastry is gone, he insisted on his father to order something for you. Father saw you crying pitifully and sent you away as he pleased. Don't even say it. It's unlikely that your white jade cloud cake slice is worth more than my jade pendant. Otherwise, why wouldn't my father give it to you? Just give it to me. You're talking nonsense. In a fit of anger, the skinny boy spat on Qiong's face, mixed with a lot of white jade cloud cake. "I'm afraid you won't be able to eat, let me give you a try." Qiong almost vomited when she saw this scene. This thin boy is really disgusting and loves to harm others. Qiong was stunned for a moment, then casually wiped his face with his hands. The skinny boy took the opportunity to put away the white jade cloud cake and ran wildly. Qiong immediately roared and fell towards the skinny boy. The original Honda field was difficult to walk on, and after snowfall, many potholes were covered by snow. Even if you look closely, it is easy to fall. As expected, Qiong chased after him for a few steps and then fell into a dog-eating shit, constantly spitting mud out of his mouth. The skinny boy started to gloat at and said, "Huh, you can't eat pastries or mud." Then he made a face and ran away. Qiong hit the ground hard and shouted, "You and Wang wait for me. Wait for me." Zhao Ting, who was chopping firewood at the Zhao family, almost hit his own foot. Qiong was supposed to laugh out loud, but when she heard Qiong shout, she suddenly became unhappy. They had their own conflicts and had nothing to do with Zhao Ting. It seems that they have been bullying Zhao Ting for not a day or two. Whenever things don't go well, they just vent their anger recklessly. They have to find ways to help Zhao Ting, even if they vent their anger. The key is to dig some sweet potatoes back first and think of countermeasures. After a long time, Qiong finally found 5 sweet potatoes in the field. The snow was too heavy now, and the ground was quickly covered. Now she can only go back and wait to see if the trap has received the goods. When Qiong returned to the village, every household was filled with smoke from cooking, and only she and her shadow walked slowly on the road holding sweet potatoes. "Little girl, I've met you again." Qiong turned around and searched, only to see Grandma Wang standing by the roadside, smiling at her. "Have you eaten yet?" Qiong shook her head. "Then you come with me, I still have some food here." Qiong hesitated for a moment, but still followed. After passing by almost someone, the two of them stopped at a side door. "This is a side door of the Zhao family. I usually eat in the firewood room. Now they have all gone to the main hall for dinner, and no one has come over." "Zhao family?" "Yeah. Grandma Wang works as a helper in the Zhao family. I saw Grandma Wang going out to cook for herself, and Qiong took the opportunity to leave the firewood room and hide by the wellhead, looking around. This is a very simple courtyard, which is shaped like a product. Through the window of the room in front, you can see the distant figure, which is likely to be the Zhao family eating in the main hall. And the side door is located behind one of the rooms, while the firewood room is adjacent to the side door." Suddenly, someone covered Qiong's mouth from behind, and she instinctively looked back. It turned out to be Zhao Ting, making a gesture of "shush" to her, and then pulling her to run into the firewood shed. "Qiong, why are you here?" "I'm here to find you." Qiong doesn't want Zhao Tingyan to know about her accidental acquaintance with Grandma Wang, in order to avoid more conflicts. I happen to want to go find you too. The master is going out after dinner, and I have to follow him. I have to pack my things and leave soon. It will take 1 or 2 days to come back. Will the master make things difficult for you? The master never makes things difficult for me, but it's my aunt and 2 cousins. Sigh, let's not mention them. When I come back this time, I will definitely bring you something good. Tingyan, do you know what Mrs. Wang, who is cooking in that room, does? She's getting old, and the master has pity on her. She's in charge of cleaning the backyard and keys, and she also does some miscellaneous work on a daily basis. Qiong looked at Grandma Wang's busy figure in the backyard kitchen, and suddenly a wonderful plan surged into her heart. By the way, what are you coming to me for? Qiong pointed to the side of the firewood pile, and a pile of sweet potatoes appeared in front of her. The mud on top was not even dry. I'm worried they won't give you food again. This is the sweet potato I just found, specifically for you. Zhao Tingyan almost cried. Sister Qiong sobbed. All right, hurry up and leave, otherwise Mr. Zhao will be in a hurry later. Okay, you should also leave Zhao Mansion quickly. My 2 cousins are very annoying. Don't let them see you here. The 2 of them bid farewell, and Zhao Tingyan quickly left the firewood room, packing his things and preparing to leave. At the same time, Grandma Wang brought 2 bowls of hot and steaming rice paste over. Qiong picked up a bowl and took a gentle sip. The sweetness of the rice immediately overflowed her mouth, and a random sense of happiness enveloped her. Tears unconsciously slid down her face. Grandma, I miss home now. I'm afraid of living alone. Can I stay with you today? Just 1 night, I'll leave early tomorrow morning. Grandma Wang put down her rice bowl and lovingly hugged Qiong, patting her back. Okay, not to mention 1 night, 10 nights is enough. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Zhao Family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Zhao Family. Zhao Tingyan, who was sitting on a donkey cart, was about to drive away when he suddenly realized how Qiong knew about that mother-in-law surnamed Wang. This little girl, it's okay, as long as she's happy, it doesn't matter. The winter wind howled, and the snow outside the window grew heavier and heavier. Qiong and Grandma Wang drank rice paste comfortably in the firewood room. Grandma Wang drank it comfortably all over her body, and the warmth flowed all over her body. She even began to doze off, and soon a faint snoring sound came out of her mouth. There are several keys hanging around her waist. Qiong pondered for a moment, not in a hurry to take it. During the day, there were many people with mixed eyes, which would not affect Grandma Wang. We had to wait until evening before we could take action. The courtyard began to become noisy, and Qiong set up some firewood as a cushion and looked out the window of the firewood room. The Zhao family was tidying up after finishing their meal when a servant-like little girl helped carry a plate. She looked around her age and didn't notice her. The little girl picked up the leftover plate and licked it several times. When others passed by her, the little girl pretended that nothing had happened and quickly went to the well, struggling to fetch water and wash the dishes. Wangya, come here. This is your meal, hurry up and take it to eat. Qiong saw that a slightly older girl broke a mantou into 2 parts and ate half of it. Wangya was wronged and picked up the remaining half. What are you looking at? If you don't want to eat, bring it over. Wangya lowered her head and her eyes were red. She said nothing. She took the remaining half of mantou and ate it while running. She ran to the well and continued to bite mantou and wash dishes. Pooh! If it weren't for the master seeing you starving to death, who would have cared about you? Don't think that if you get the master's pity, you can cross me. Do you hear me? Wangya quickly stood up and said obediently, Wang Ting, I heard you. Wangya, Wang Ting, the Zhao family is quite interested in the prosperity of their family. However, this Mr. Zhao, who raised the orphan Zhao Ting of the family, helped Grandma Wang, and took in Wangya, doesn't sound like a hard-hearted person. How could his two sons cultivate that kind of virtue? After eating half a mantou, Wang Ting turned into the room on the left inside and began to sweep. Wangya held the washed house and walked towards the kitchen. Qiong seized the opportunity, took a sweet potato, and rushed out of the firewood room with a cat crouched over her waist. She placed the sweet potato next to Wangya's basin for washing dishes, and then ran back to the firewood room with a cat crouched over her waist, quietly observing. Wangya happened to come out of the kitchen and saw someone enter the firewood room. She thought it was because she was dizzy, shook her head, and didn't pay attention. She continued to walk to the side of the basin, preparing to wash dishes. Suddenly, she saw a sweet potato lying quietly next to the basin, as if she had been pinned down. She then reached out and kicked the sweet potato into her clothes, looking around cautiously. A shadow passed by the window of the firewood room. Could it be Grandma Wang? Wang Ting in the left room was still sweeping and didn't notice her. Qiong hid by the wall of the firewood room, patting her chest. Fortunately, she was almost discovered. As soon as she turned around, she found Wangya poking her head and looking around the firewood room. Puff, this little girl. Qiong almost spat out old blood. As long as Wangya turns her head, she can see herself. But her gaze was firmly drawn to the sweet potatoes on the ground, and she saw Grandma Wang snoring in the firewood pile. She tiptoed into the woodshed, touched a sweet potato, and when she was about to withdraw, she met Qiong's 4 eyes and stood awkwardly in place. Before Qiong could speak, Wangya ran away, ignoring the sweet potatoes that had fallen on the ground. Oh no! What if Wangya informs people? I can't chase her out yet. Wang Ting will come out of the room at any time. I saw Wangya with a break on her feet, suddenly standing in place and looking back. I saw Qiong standing by the door, holding sweet potatoes and smiling at herself, shaking. Come and get it, it's delicious. Wangya looked at Qiong, wondering what she was thinking. She took 2 steps back and ran away again. Qiong scratched her head and wondered what to do. Wangya! What are you wandering around in the yard? Wang Ting came out of the room holding a cleaning tool. Are you doing something in the woodshed? Qiong suddenly became nervous and hid in the firewood room, leaning against the wall. Wang Ting stared at Wangya, who, like before, lowered her head and looked ominous. No, Miss Wang Ting, the wind blew open the door of the firewood room. Grandma Wang is inside, and I'm afraid she'll freeze. Wang Ting looked into the firewood room and as expected, she saw Grandma Wang snoring. You old and young, you can't do any work or endure hardship. You're a waste of food. It's better to freeze all of you to death. I saw Wang Ting constantly scolding Wangya, while Wangya just lowered her head, grabbed the corners of her clothes with both hands, and remained silent as before. Dead girl, dead mother. In law, it's really unlucky. At the same time, Qiong's impression of Wang Ting is extremely poor. Only when faced with a weak attitude can their true face be exposed. This Wang Ting is not virtuous in her words and is extremely harsh. Wang Ting twisted her waist and walked away, while Wangya ran over and closed the door to the firewood room, continuing to wash dishes and tidy up, without any intention of coming back to the firewood room. Qiong also breathed a sigh of relief and was very grateful to Wangya for not exposing herself. At the same time, she turned around and picked up a thick firewood to hold against the back of the door. It seems necessary to include Wang Ting in one's own plan, with a small punishment and a big warning. Grandma Wang slept soundly and took Qiong out to fish in the nearby river in the afternoon. Qiong learned many fishing techniques and unexpectedly fell off a big fat fish. The two of them had a delicious meal and quietly returned to the Zhao family's firewood house in the evening. After the Zhao family finished dinner, while Wang Ye was washing dishes, Qiong placed another sweet potato next to her sink. Wang Ye changed her usual sulky appearance and smiled at Qiong at the window of the firewood room. This little girl has a very cute smile. Qiong continued to observe and saw two young children from the Zhao family enter the house on the right, while Wang Ting followed a woman with a flattering smile on her face. The woman's triangular eyes wandered around like mice, her face covered in oily food, and her hands kept groping for the jade bead necklace around her neck. She leisurely returned to the room on the left, and Wang Ting followed in. I believe this is Lady Zhao. It always gets dark early in winter, and soon after, the lights in Mrs. Zhao's room went out. The lamp of the second son of the Zhao family on the right is still on, and at this moment, Grandma Wang has also fallen asleep. Qiong waited for a moment, using the memories of night and day, quietly groped to the front of Zhao's second son's house, poked a small hole in the window with her hand, and looked inside. One of them rested their legs on a chair, while the other leaned against the back of the chair. The books in their hands were crooked and swayed in front of them, as if they couldn't hold them and were about to fall off at any moment. Pai Chiu threw the book directly onto the table and angrily said, "This Wang heir has caused me so much punishment. My mother wants me to memorize this article. Just because you talk too much, you only need to memorize, and I have to punish you for copying the article 10 times. Fortunately, I have already finished copying today, otherwise I won't be able to explain it to my teacher. Do you still know how to copy books? Don't be Wang heir who wrote it for you. This is what he should do. Cut, don't let the gentleman recognize it, otherwise you'll have to look good. If you don't say it, I won't say it. Who knew he copied it? I'm so tired that I won't look anymore. I'll pack up my things and go to my master's place tomorrow." Pichio picked up 2 packages from the chair and placed them on the table. "Check everything you have and don't forget to bring anything, sir, and punish me accordingly. It's all inside, it's annoying. Go to sleep now. Is the copied book also there? I'm here, don't talk too much. I'm going to bed now." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Winter Night. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Winter Night. It's really hard to find a place to break through the iron shoes and get them without any effort. Qiong quietly returned to the firewood room and took out the things she had prepared before, a wooden pick and 2 pieces of hard firewood, both of which were residues left by chopping firewood. Natural tools are the most difficult to prevent. The reason why I didn't take Grandma Wang's key is because I didn't want to implicate her. This is the person who first came to this world and taught themselves how to make traps, fish, and eat meat. In the latter half of the night, Qiong picked up the flint she had used to light and roast sweet potatoes before and lit the small piece of hard firewood outside the firewood room. The cold winter at night was terrifying, and the small piece of hard firewood in Qiong's hand moved like a ghost in the heavy snow. By the time she approached the room where Zhao's second son was located, Qiong's hands were almost frozen stiff. She quickly took out the pick, inserted it into the gap in the door, and gently flicked the latch until the subtle and crisp sound began. Qiong quickly pushed the door in to avoid the cold wind blowing into the house, but she couldn't stay too long. The firewood still had a slight smell of smoke, which would wake them up. According to the memory of the day, Qiong touched the desk and looked at the 2 packages in front of her, but made a mistake. During the day, I only saw a ball carrying a bundle over, and I don't know which specific bundle belongs to whom. When feeling worried, I could vaguely smell a faint fragrance of plum blossoms. This taste is so familiar to Qiong that it's the white jade cloud cake eaten by a skinny boy. Taking a closer sniff, the fragrance of plum blossoms became clear, and the location of the scent immediately confirmed the weight of the skinny boy's bundle. But the fragrance of this pastry actually seeps into the fabric. You can imagine how delicious it is. Later, Qiong gently opened the thin boy's bundle, quietly stuffed Wang Air into her arms for copying articles for him, and also took the cloud cake with her. Finally, she tied the bundle back together and placed it in its original position. At this moment, Qiong tiptoed into the place where the two boys were sleeping, and saw Pichio sleeping soundly, breathing with her mouth open. Qiong pinched some crumbs of cloud-shaped cake from her arms and sprinkled them on Pichio's mouth. Some powder fell into his mouth, and he even instinctively pursed his lips. Qiong almost burst into laughter as she looked at him. But just as he finished sprinkling pastry powder in his hand and left the ball flipped over and grabbed Qiong's hand, firmly holding it in his arms. Many saliva also rubbed against her hand. Qiong was shocked and didn't dare to move for a moment until her hands were almost numb. She gently probed the ball's breath until his breathing stabilized again before daring to try to pull her hand out. My immortal, why is the power of the ball so great? It seems that I haven't treated myself unfairly in my daily life. After multiple attempts, I finally pulled my hand out of the ball's arms. Second, what are you doing? Qiong quickly extinguished the firewood, and the room fell into darkness again. Pichio always felt like the cloud cake in his dream had been taken away by his second son, and in a daze, he saw a figure swaying in front of him. I have a jade pendant, jade pendant. Qiong squatted under the bed, stepping on the extinguished fine firewood, trying to prevent the smoke from spreading as much as possible, while covering her mouth and not daring to show any signs of grandeur, afraid of waking up the Zhao family. When he got up again, at some point, he reluctantly lit the firewood with a flint and rubbed his legs, only to see the jade pendant of the ball in his hand. Ball, your jade pendant, I borrowed it to use. This time, Qiong didn't put in much effort and directly took the jade pendant from his hand. She carefully withdrew from their bedroom again, lifted the suction latch inside with a firewood pick, and locked their bedroom door from the outside. At this moment, the candles flickered in Mrs. Zhao's room across from her, and she had already arrived at the door. It's too late to go back to the woodshed. Qiong took advantage of her height and quickly hid at the wellhead. She had just taken cover of her figure, while the door to Mrs. Zhao's bedroom opened at the same time. It turned out that Wang Ting was carrying a small candlestick out to wake up at night, and there was also a candle fire inside the house for lighting. A divine opportunity. Qiong saw Wang Ting's candlelight enter the toilet and rushed into Mrs. Zhao's room with a swift step. There was a curtain in one direction and a very low bed in another, clearly not for Mrs. Zhao's sleeping. Reaching out to touch, there is still residual warmth in the blanket. 80% is where Wang Ting sleeps. Qiong dug out Wang Ting's clothes from the blanket and stuffed the jade pendant of the leather ball into Wang Ting's pocket. The loss of property inevitably led to innocent people being punished. It was most appropriate to leave it with her, and in the end, some pastry powder was sprinkled on her clothes. After completing everything, Qiong quickly withdrew from Mrs. Zhao's room. Just as she stepped out of the door, Qiong was stopped. Wang Ting, pour me a glass of water. Madame Zhao surprisingly woke up at this moment. At this moment, the candles outside the window began to flicker, and Wang Ting was coming back. There were wolves in front and tigers behind, so Qiong had to grit her head and return to the house. She brought a glass of water on the table and slowly walked towards the back of the curtain. Opening the outer curtain, fortunately there was another layer inside. At this moment, Mrs. Zhao's hand was reaching out, waiting to receive water to drink. Qiong walked over cautiously and handed the water to Lady Zhao's hand. After the person behind the curtain had finished drinking, she handed out the cup again. Qiong hurriedly went to pick it up, but the person behind the curtain didn't mean to let go of the cup. Wang Ting, don't think too much about the master, it will benefit you. Otherwise, be careful of your skin. Yes, Qiong pinched her throat and imitated Wang Ting's voice. Madame Zhao only released the cup, and Qiong breathed a sigh of relief. The person behind the curtain's breathing gradually stabilized, and Wang Ting returned from outside and closed the door. Ha! Qiong finally breathed a sigh of relief. Madam, do you call me? Damn it, why come again? Wang Ting's figure holding a candle was getting closer, and one hand was about to pull open the outermost curtain. As Wang Ting approached the master bedroom, a cup was handed out from behind the curtain. Has the sun risen to the west today? Madam, will she still pour water and drink it by herself in the middle of the night? But as a servant, I dare not ask more questions. I have to take the cup. Do you still want to drink, madam? The person behind the curtain extended a hand and waved it, indicating not to use it. Wang Ting wisely retreated, extinguished the candles, and fell asleep. Qiong, standing on Mrs. Zhao's bed, finally breathed a sigh of relief and put Mrs. Zhao's hand back into the blanket. It seems that good sleep quality is really important. At least I admire the Zhao family in this regard. After waiting for a quarter of an hour, Qiong smoothly came out of the ladies' room and came out with the door bolt placed outside. When she returned to the firewood room, Grandma Wang had just woken up and smelled the faint fragrance of plum blossoms. Girl, why aren't you sleeping? Grandma, I can't sleep and I want to go back and see my mother's belongings. Grandma Wang opened the side door for Qiong, and saw Wang Ye standing outside the door for a long time, already frozen stiff. Hungry, cold. Wang Ye weakly lifted her eyes, then her whole body softened. The two of them carried Wang Ye back to the firewood room to keep her warm, and Grandma Wang quietly went to the kitchen to boil hot water. Wang Ye, how did you stand outside the door? Wang Ting, accused me of stealing food and fined me not to sleep tonight, but I didn't. Woo, I haven't eaten for several days, I'm so hungry. Qiong's heart warmed her trembling hands with heartache, thinking that her concern for tomorrow would involve Grandma Wang. It seemed that she couldn't be too soft-hearted towards certain people. Plans are once again surging in my mind. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Madame Zhao. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Madame Zhao. The east wind howled, and the night in Zhao mansion was silent. In the woodshed, Wang Ye drank hot water and wolfed down the white jade cloud cake. Then he took out the sweet potatoes he had hidden during the day from his pocket, disregarding their ripeness, and began to nibble on them in large bites. Tears kept streaming down my face, and after finishing, I let out a deep hiccup before finally calming down. Grandma Wang patted Wang Ye's back with heartache and said helplessly, I haven't been here for many years, old lady. Why do you still suffer like this? Grandma Wang, has Wang Ting been treating her like this all along? Except for the old lady, what she did today is the same as before. If anyone complains, she will only be bullied even worse. After listening, Qiong silently withdrew from the firewood room. Where are you going? I have some diarrhea, go out for a while. Qiong turned her back to Grandma Wang, and Wang Ye grabbed a handful of thatch, and quickly twisted it into a human shape after leaving the firewood room. Although it was rough, it was generally recognizable, and after tying it up, she placed it in her arms. As soon as she was familiar with the light door, she entered Mrs. Zhao's bedroom and lifted the curtain of her master bedroom. She fell deeply asleep, even maintaining her sleeping position as she had just left. I saw that she was still wearing the jade bead necklace around her neck, but it was only at night, and Qiong couldn't see the condition of the necklace very clearly even holding up the fine firewood. However, Mrs. Zhao even wears this necklace when she sleeps, so she must have loved it so much. Coupled with the warning she gave to Wang Ting while drinking water just now, it seems that the relationship between the master and servant is not very close. Qiong safely removed the jade bead necklace from Mrs. Zhao's neck, took it to the yard, picked up a stone, and directly smashed the necklace, with a bucket next to it. Qiong picked up some intact jade beads and stuffed them into the thatched man, then threw them into the bucket, and then threw the bucket into the well. Collect the remaining jade beads, carefully place them in your arms, and then sneak into Mrs. Zhao's bedroom again. Sprinkle the broken jade beads on the edge of Mrs. Zhao's shoes, and then insert a portion of the jade beads into Wang Ting's clothes. Qiong, who had done everything, returned to the firewood room calmly. Wangya, the little girl, had already fallen asleep, and Wang's mother-in-law Wangya quickly stepped forward to care about her health. It's just diarrhea. I have some anti-diarrheal herbs at home, and there's just a little left. I'll go back and have some and it'll be fine. Do you want me to help you retrieve it, old lady? No, Grandma Wang, I've been bothering you here for a while. It wouldn't be good if the Zhao family saw me. I'd better go back early. By the way, I've dug some sweet potatoes. Please don't mind, Grandma. Grandma Wang looked a bit moved and simply stuffed a few sweet potatoes for Qiong. After all, I am a hunter's family and can't starve no matter what. It's you, who is young and needs to take good care of yourself. Before leaving, Qiong still couldn't rest assured and gave a few more reminders. Grandma Wang, I don't think Wang Ting and Mrs. Zhao are compatible. No matter what happens tomorrow, you and Wang Ye should not talk too much. It's a trick to be wise and protect oneself. Grandma Wang looked at Qiong with a smile and nodded in agreement. By the time Qiong returned to her home, the sky had already turned white with fish bellies, and the snow had gradually stopped. Thinking about the damp thatch from a while ago, Qiong took small steps and spread out the thatch in the yard as much as possible until it covered the entire yard. She then picked out a portion of the drier grass and threw it onto the bed. This is one of my few sources of warmth, and if I don't keep warm now and have no one to take care of me when I get sick, it can be very life-threatening. After doing everything, Qiong took out the purse from under the bedboard and put the jade beads in, and the purse suddenly became heavy. Qiong lay contentedly on the bedboard covered with dry thatch, now with many thatches as blankets. Her own bed now looks like a chicken coop. No matter the golden nest or grass nest, the one that can keep warm and sleep is a good nest. I've been busy all night and haven't had a good rest. There's still a good show to watch at the Zhao family today. It's not too late to go and see it when I have a good rest. Qiong comfortably nestled in her own chicken coop, with 2 sweet potatoes roasting in the firewood outside. The fragrance and beautiful dreams intertwined with her. Hot pot, sweet and sour fillet, braised goose, stewed ribs, braised vegetable heart. When it was bright in the sky, the sound of 2 people arguing began to come from the room of the second son of the Zhao family. The chubby boy, without even wearing his coat, rushed out of the door and ran to Mrs. Zhao's room, where he began to bang on the door. Mrs. Zhao, who was sleeping soundly, was dreaming that she was surrounded by a bunch of jewelry when suddenly a lot of jewelry fell from the sky and kept hitting her head. Bang bang bang. Mother. My father gave me a jade pendant, but my second son took it and didn't give it to me. He bullies me every day, you have to make up your mind for me, mother. Mrs. Zhao opened her eyes and realized that her eldest son was knocking on the door non-stop. She couldn't help feeling restless. The child didn't go to school early in the morning, disturbing her dreams for a worthless jade pendant. It never stops for a day. Before getting up, the leader of the Zhao family had already reached Mrs. Zhao's master bedroom and knelt on the ground, sobbing loudly. At this moment, the second son of the Zhao family also ran in. Mother. He not only lied, but also stole my cloud cake. What's even more despicable is that he punished me by copying and hiding the article I want to hand over to my husband, not giving it to me. You're talking nonsense. Don't try to deceive your mother. You're a scammer. You clearly have no good intentions. Early in the morning, the second son of the Zhao family knelt on the cold tiles and soon began to tremble with the cold. However, as they watched each other's relentless postures, no one had the intention of getting up from the ground, and they stood in a stalemate like this. Anger erupted in their eyes, and they began to tug at each other, getting angry. Wang Ting looked at it incorrectly and couldn't even put on her clothes. She rushed over to try to pull them apart. The second son of the Zhao family was used to being domineering at home, and in the chaos, she pushed Wang Ting aside and hit the table. The teapot also poured water on Wang Ting's head. "You see, I'm still alive, not a day clean." Madame Zhao sighed and quickly got off the bed when suddenly her foot felt like it had been pricked by something and she let out a painful sound. Wang Ting didn't care about the water all over her head and couldn't control the two little ancestors in front of her. She bumped around and looked at Mrs. Zhao's foot soles. "I saw a green fragment piercing into Mrs. Zhao's foot." Wang Ting glanced at Mrs. Zhao and placed her leg on her knee, slowly pulling out the fragment. Madame Zhao looked carefully and saw why the color looked so familiar, as if she had seen it somewhere before. Her subordinates instinctively touched her neck. "Empty and empty. My chalcedony bead chain. Where is my chalcedony bead chain? Wang Ting, go find it." Wang Ting hurriedly went to Mrs. Zhao's dressing table and searched layer by layer. Mrs. Zhao was anxious and rushed up with one swift step, pouring all the things in the dressing tray onto the table and randomly pulling, but she didn't see her favorite pearl chain. Who took it? Madame Zhao suddenly glared at Wang Ting, thinking that she had been waiting for a while last night when this dead girl brought the water over. She must have been dissatisfied with herself for a long time. Wang Ting was staring blankly at Lady Zhao and couldn't help but step back. At this point, the second son of the Zhao family couldn't beat the eldest son. He ran to Lady Zhao and used his mother as a wall to separate him. The two of them jumped up and down, pounding each other, and almost scraped other jewelry to the ground. Although Lady Zhao's favorite is that string of chalcedony beads, her other gestures are also heartfelt. She couldn't control the two second-generation ancestors for a moment. In a moment of desperation, she slapped the eldest in the face. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Punish Wang Ting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Punish Wang Ting. Zhao, who was slapped by Mrs. Zhao, was stunned and immediately began to cry. "Mother, if you don't turn to me, it's okay. Why are you still hitting me? Do you think you despise me? Shut up. Get out of here. Wang Ting, please notify everyone in the courtyard to wait at my doorstep and then tell Wang Posey to lock all the rooms for me." The second son of the Zhao family saw that his mother was serious and immediately restrained a lot, standing upright inside the house in a proper manner. Subsequently, Wang Ting obediently withdrew and quickly gathered all the servants in the yard. The people in the courtyard looked at the mistress, who had not combed her hair and had a pale complexion today. They sat outside angrily, whispering to each other below, discussing whether something might have happened. Wang Ting took a small stove and presented it to Lady Zhao. As she approached Lady Zhao, a faint fragrance emanated from her body. Mrs. Zhao couldn't help but take a few more glances at her, but there were many people in the courtyard, and it was impossible to determine from whom the fragrance was emitted. Madame Zhao stood up and inspected the servants in the courtyard, but no one dared to speak out loud. Madame Zhao whispered softly, "I forgot where to put my chalcedony bead chain. If anyone sees it, there will be a great reward." The servant below did not stir fry, but still couldn't resist discussing. "I have never seen my wife's chalcedony necklace leave. No, I carry it with me every day and never leave." "Madam, if something is missing, shouldn't we first ask Wang Ting?" Wang Ting felt uneasy when she heard several talkative servants discussing her. Madam usually doesn't treat her well, thanks to the fact that the master often goes out and is not at home. If the master is at home, anything she does is wrong. In a fit of anger, he fiercely gouged out those servants. Wang Ting's facial expression naturally couldn't escape Mrs. Zhao's eyes. She couldn't find the chalcedony at first, and felt like a stone was blocking her heart. As soon as she thought about this girl's usual bullying in front of other servants, she didn't know if the master was supporting her. With this in mind, Mrs. Zhao's expression became even worse. The servants who used to whisper are now as quiet as chickens. Mother. It's my big brother who stole my cloud cake. When I woke up in the morning, I saw the residue on his mouth, and even now I can still smell the plum blossom fragrance of the cake. I didn't eat it. Are you crazy about pastries? Mother, if you don't believe it, just smell it carefully, it has a faint plum blossom fragrance. The people in the courtyard were momentarily confused. They were not talking about the lady's necklace, but how could it be related to the pastries of the two young masters? There is indeed a faint plum blossom fragrance. Wang Posey said with certainty, when I was still hunting, when I met plum blossoms blooming, the sky was filled with such a fragrant fragrance. There's nothing wrong with it. Everyone knows that Wang Posey has the ability to hunt, and coupled with the smell in the air, many people have indeed smelled it. Mrs. Zhao was a bit angry. She lost her favorite jewelry, but these two kids only wanted to eat it. Forget it, my dear, jewelry is important. Pastries are second best. If you lose them, you can buy them again. If anyone sees my jade bead chain, let them choose one of the things in my jewelry box. After listening, everyone took a deep breath. Everyone knew that their wife loved precious jewelry the most. Every time the master came back, he would insist on asking for one or two items. Over the years, I wonder how many treasures have been stored in that makeup box. Upon hearing Madam's words, many people became excited, but due to Wang Ting's presence, everyone knew her virtues. She had to scrutinize every grain of rice on her body, and it was difficult to guarantee that she would not snatch the reward from Madam. Everyone fell silent again. Seeing that everyone was silent again, Madam had no choice but to ask one by one. Wangya, have you ever seen Madam's jade chalcedony bead chain? Wangya lowered her head and stared at her toes as usual, then glanced at Wang Ting who was asking questions and shook her head vigorously. I see that you are becoming more and more cunning, daring to hide Madam's pearl chains privately. Upon hearing these words, Mrs. Zhao really wanted to rush up and tear her mouth apart. Before asking a few people, she casually labeled herself as a hidden person. Who dares to tell the truth? Wang Ting thought her attitude was not tough enough and she should show greater authority, so she pounced and gave Wangya a big mouth. Madame Zhao was directly stunned. Does this Wang Ting treat herself like air? Wangya was fanned and lay on the ground, unusually not crying. With tears in her eyes, she shouted loudly, Sister Wang Ting, we dare not, it's just that you are by your side every day. How many bead chains does Madam have? Where do we know more than you do? Everyone picked up Wangya with all their hands and feet, and the look in their eyes at Wang Ting could eat her. Wang Ting, Madam hasn't spoken yet and the situation hasn't been understood yet. What are you doing to make a child difficult? That's right, who can be closer to Madam than her on weekdays? Mrs. Zhao has a headache. She has always boasted that Wang Ting can't make any waves, but it's hard to guarantee that after a long time, she really can't do anything. The second son of the Zhao family ignored the small commotion outside the door and was still struggling to make sure that stealing pastries would give him a plum blossom aroma. Obviously, the plum blossom aroma here is more sophisticated than in his own room. The two of them pushed and shoved each other, cursing and leaving Madam's bedroom. If they don't leave again, they will be late for school. I'll settle accounts with you after I finish school. Zhao, the eldest, and Zhao, the second, made funny faces and provoked each other, completely ignoring Mrs. Zhao's meeting. Zhao Laoda was just as imposing as he lifted his foot and was about to kick second brother. Second brother quickly dodged and shook Zhao Laoda, causing him to lose balance and collide with Wang Ting. Ouch! Dang! As Wang Ting and Zhao Laoda fell, the jade pendant placed by Hua Qiong in Wang Ting's clothes was thrown out in front of everyone. Jade pendant. It's the jade pendant my father gave me. Okay, second in line, you collude with Wang Ting to cause trouble for me. No. Young master, I don't know. It's not me. Zhao, the eldest brother, picked up the jade pendant on the ground with heartache and carefully rubbed it. He found that there were subtle cracks on the pendant, and couldn't express his anger for a moment. He had to run to Mrs. Zhao with grievances and let his mother make the decision for him. The crowd immediately began to discuss. The young master lost the jade pendant on Wang Ting's body, and it is difficult to guarantee that the wife's jade marrow bead chain was also taken by her. This is not necessarily black under the light. Relying on the trust of the master and his wife to act recklessly must have brought many benefits. These words ran into Lady Zhao's ears without a word falling out, and with a single command, Wang Ting was bound up in all sorts of ways. "Mother, look." This was found from Wang Ting's bedding. At some point, Zhao Lao went to Wang Ting's bed and made some fuss, only to see a few semi-transparent beads lying quietly in his palm. Madame Zhao was furious. How could her beloved jade necklace have become like this? "Where are the other beads? Speak up." At this moment, Wang Ting had already fallen to the ground. Despite being tied up, she struggled to crawl towards Lady Zhao, trembling and incoherently saying, "Madam, I didn't take it." "No." Pop. A loud slap came from Wang Ting's face. "Damn it. I treat you well. How dare you steal something that doesn't belong to you? Lock her up in the woodshed for me, starve for 3 days, and see if she tells the truth." "Madam. It's not good." "So what's going on?" "I saw a servant lifting a large bucket of water from the well, inside which there was a prominent witchcraft and thatched grass man, with a jade chalcedony bead embedded inside. I just went to fetch water to wash the 2 young masters' clothes, but I found this dirty thing." "All right. Wang Ting, that's great." Zhao Fu laughed back at his popularity. "Now that your family has given birth to evil slaves like you, I'm afraid it won't work if you don't report to the government." Wang Ting was instantly disoriented, tears streaming down her face. "Madam, it's really not me, I don't know." Everyone looked at Wang Ting's appearance and didn't feel sorry. From the beginning until now, there hasn't even been anyone to speak for her. She should have been severely punished long ago. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Viewing Traps. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Viewing Traps. "Madam, for the sake of serving you, please don't take me to see the official, I will die. I can't bear your service, and besides, you dare not even touch the things of witchcraft and witchcraft. Are you afraid of meeting officials? Someone, bring this witchcraft and Wang Ting directly to the government office." When Qiong woke up, it was already afternoon, and Zhao Tingen had also returned, eating roasted sweet potatoes in the fire pit in front of the house. Seeing her wake up, Zhao Tingen ran happily to her and mysteriously pulled out a package from her arms. "What is this?" The faint fragrance of plum blossoms emanated from the package. "White jade cloud cake." "You only guessed half right." Zhao Tingen handed the package forward and gestured for Qiong to take a look, looking eagerly at her reaction. There are 2 smaller packages in the burlap package, and when you open one of them, it is by Yu Yun Pian Gao. Qiong tore off 2 pieces and handed one to Zhao Tingen, while the other was carefully savored in her mouth. Behind them, there seemed to be countless red plum blossoms blooming in the snowy goose feathers, enveloped in white jade cloud cakes, one red and one white, both pleasing to the eye and delicious. "I didn't expect this world to be so delicious. It looks similar to many modern pastries, and the level of deliciousness is also on par." Qiong looked at Zhao Tingen with a hopeful expression on her face, smiled knowingly, and then opened the second small package. Inside is a delicate red and white small square box, with a blooming plum blossom pattern painted on top. Opening the small box again, there was a layer of red paper inside, and inside was an exquisite white porcelain small box. There was no decoration on the white porcelain small box, which was very simple. "This color scheme is really eye-catching." Qiong carefully took out the white porcelain small box and opened it again. It's actually rouge. Dip your fingers lightly on the top of the rouge, and the beautiful color of the rouge contrasts sharply with your dirty little hands. So my hands are already so dirty. Do you like it? I like it. Qiong, when I make a lot of money, I'll buy you better rouge. More delicious pastries. Qiong looked at Zhao Tingen in front of her and gave her a brilliant smile. This child is very considerate. This time you came back from shopping, the Zhao family didn't search for you. I hid my things in the things I gave to my wife. They won't even take away the rouge of a woman. I didn't expect him to be quite clever. If he had been doing this before and had been flexible, he might have been able to recover a lot of losses, but he's still a little kid and his demands shouldn't be too high. It's also rare for him to have this kind of mindset. Later, Zhao Tingen mysteriously approached Qiong and whispered, I heard that Wang Ting cursed his wife with a goo man. When the master heard this, he was furious and flipped through the courtyard again. Unexpectedly, he also discovered that Wang Ting had stolen a lot of her jewelry and reported it to the official. He will be executed after autumn. Upon hearing the 4 words, ask and kill after autumn, Qiong was stunned. The scene she had originally seen in a TV drama was actually happening in reality, which was vastly different from the feeling of being separated by a screen. Qiong was a bit wavering, wondering if she would take too much action by doing so. Originally, she just wanted to give her some hard work and teach her a lesson, but unexpectedly, she ended up taking her life. We often suffer from her assassination, and she deserves it. The government's verdict makes everyone feel relieved. What if she didn't have to die? Just because she stole the property of her mistress, coupled with the testimony of being a servant who treated her equally harshly, if she didn't die, she would be executed by the government and become disabled. It's better to die. Qiong pondered in her heart, it seemed that according to Wang Ting's character, there would always be such a day, and she was just adding fire to make her burn completely. The master is worried that there will be someone who is not good for Zhao Laoda and Lao, so he has asked them to stay at the teacher's house for a period of time recently. Now, the affairs in the backyard are temporarily managed by Grandma Wang. Grandma Wang actually got a promotion, which can be considered the second spring of her career. Wang Ye is now following Madam, becoming a rough servant in the mistress's house. When she gets a little older, she will train her well. In front of Madam, no one who doesn't have eyes dares to bully her again. My own fire has actually made some people's lives better. When Qiong thought of this, her heart suddenly became less conflicted. It seemed that this matter was not entirely bad either. I just ate a few pieces of cloud cake, but it's not enough. Now my stomach is starting to rumble again. Qiong, the master is going to a relatively distant town tomorrow. There are more things and people in that town than here. I want to go there and learn some serious skills. What do you want to learn? Zhao Tingen tilted his head for a moment and then said seriously, I haven't figured it out yet. The two of them chatted casually again, and Qiong learned that the commercial tax in this world is 30 In short, earn 30 copper coins and pay the tax on 1 copper coin to the government. Except for salt and iron, most commodity taxes are the same, in addition to passing taxes and residence taxes, which roughly correspond to current tariffs and transaction taxes. In this way of calculation, my goodness, all kinds of taxes combined are still not low. With a tax rate of 30% and 9%, no matter how much I earn, nearly 1/3 of it does not belong to me. I couldn't help but feel a wave of slander in my heart, the emperor of this world must be very rich. After sending Zhao Tingen away, Qiong planned to go inside the trap and take a look. Maybe she can have some meat today. A wave of anticipation surged in my heart. As she walked on the road, she felt that today the villagers looked at her with fewer thorns than before. Laughing at the flowers with a smile. On the way there, I unexpectedly met Wang Ye. Without Wang Ting's bullying, the little girl's head was noticeably raised. Although she didn't completely break free from the habit of speaking and looking at her toes, her overall spirit and energy had significantly changed. At least don't worry about her cervical spondylosis. She stopped Qiong and told her that in order to thank her for saving her that day and providing her with food, she would definitely come to help if there was anything in the future. Qiong didn't expect her to be of any help at all, but it makes sense for her to say that she was busy that night. A few days ago, some of the snow also dissipated, and the traps that were originally covered were also exposed. When I approached, something seemed to be moving inside. Looking closer, a fat gray rabbit was shivering inside. Qiong put in some effort to get the rabbit out of the trap. Carefully tied it firmly with thatch. "Little cutie, don't be afraid. Come into my stomach and warm up later." Qiong found Grandma Wang and asked her to handle the rabbit meat well, and also gave her the rabbit skin as a reward. I happily returned to my own house, put on rabbit meat, sprinkled a little salt. Although there was a slight bitterness, it was also a rare delicacy at present. After partially baking, store it and leave another portion to share with Zhao Ting. Looking at the oily rabbit meat, Qiong sighed from the bottom of her heart and said, "The rabbit is so cute and full. I love you so much." End of this chapter.